I'm Anna, the Yarn Randomizer, coming to you a day later than usual. And today is the 19th of May, it's Sunday, and this is episode 24 of the Yarn Randomizer. We were out at a motorcycle event on Saturday where my husband got to try out an old motorcycle he'd refurbished, and he had a lot of fun, and I got some knitting in, so it was a nice day, but I had to wait to record to today. And so this is a knitting podcast, as you might be able to tell here, and if you've been watching already, you know this well. So welcome for anybody who's stumbled across my little corner of the YouTube universe, and welcome back to folks who've been watching and stuff. And I think I'll be looking that way because I have my computer here and my notes up on the screen there. And so you can find me on Instagram as original.annasender, and that contact information is below. And on Ravelry is the Yarn Randomizer. And on, email, I'm the Yarn Randomizer at gmail.com, and I also have an address, so when I send things out I can have a return address on there as well. So all that information is down below. Real quick, why randomizers? Because I like to randomly pick from my stash for most of my projects, and it was originally to solve a problem of like having yarn that kept lingering in my stash. And so this way, instead of me having to try to pick something and having a tendency to pick recent stuff, it's an equal opportunity for my entire stash and leftovers, not just new skeins, but also leftovers to get picked to have some project made out of them. So that's the whole philosophy of the show. And please like and subscribe. It helps, just doing the likes helps folks find this. I don't know exactly how the YouTube algorithm works, but that's part of it. And so I will apologize. I do have my window open. And there's somebody who recently got a little sports bike, and I'm going to bet you in a couple minutes he's going to be coming right back down this road. I live on a kind of a rural area, and we're not on a state route or anything like this. This is not a main road, and most of the time it's pretty quiet, but occasionally you get that kind of thing going on. But we'll persevere. It's not, I remember when watching the Grocery Girls and the mowing that would happen like on a regular basis, or trash collection out behind their place and everything, all the noises and stuff that would go on. It's a little quieter here, but not all the time. All right, so first things first, I always like to get these things out of the way right away. Is last time I had talked about giving away this skein of Wildflowers colorway yarn from Yarnable, or from its Hypnotic Yarns. And so I made a pick, and so it was the user name is WFAYTHE, and when I look at their YouTube page it says Faith Fukumoto. So if that's you, get in touch with me through the Gmail address and we'll work out how to get this to you. So that's who's getting this. So I don't like to make everybody wait for the whole episode to find out about that. So that is the preliminaries taken care of. And so we start out with this, what I'm wearing. So I know I said last time I had a stretch goal of finishing this sweater. Well, right now it's still kind of a poncho. And so you can kind of see how all that goes. There's that. And so I've got the sweater, I have put the shoulders together, I've put in the neck, and I've actually got both sleeves are complete. And so there's some things I want to talk about with this, but yeah, so both sleeves are done and ready. So basically this sweater is just down to seaming it together. So first the sleeves go in, and in the pattern they ask you to cast them off. And oh, by the way, this is the Harvey Wallbanger by Thea Coleman, and I really like the pattern. I love the way, I was thinking of doing stripes, and this was a way to kind of change it up and stuff, and have some really interesting texture as well. And then So I got these sleeves done, and some of the things in the pattern called for was casting off here and at the back. I did not do that. I picked up from the live stitches here, picked up along these areas that were kind of cast off, and then here at the shoulders I did a 3 needle bind off on the inside. I've actually been toying with taking some of this color yarn and making some purl bumps here to kind of correspond to how there's purl bumps there, but I'm just toying with the idea. And then one of the other things to notice is this really rich purple here, I ran out of. I only had enough for the back and the front of this on this single stripe here. So I ended up using one of the other purples in its place on the sleeves where it would have occurred. So I ended up repeating this purple up here, but I think it looks just fine. And on the sleeves and the collar, I replicated, the ribbing as it is at the bottom of the sweater. And that is, it's a, how do you describe it? It's a 2 by 1 by 2. It's always 2 purls, but it's 2 knits, 1 knit, 2 knit, 1 knit, alternating with 2 purls. And it lines up nicely with the pattern. You see how the 2 knits lines up with the 2 knits in between. The single knit lines up with the center of the pattern repeat, the lace repeat. And so I like that at the bottom of the sweater, and in the pattern she has is you use a single rib here and at the end of the sleeves, and I decided to do this. In fact, there's a photograph on my Instagram where I was working out how to do this, and yeah, I think you can kind of see that. I had to work out how many repeats I could fit in the different parts of the neck, and I worked it out. I had to alter the number of picked up stitches and then work the pattern repeat to have the same pattern up here, and then I just cast off in pattern. But so I love the sweater. I can't wait to get it seamed. I may not right now it's a little warm wearing this right now because it is a very nice day. It's up to 82 degrees outside. I'm maintaining because I've got my ceiling fan going and the window open, and you may be hearing a lot of birds out there. I don't know. You have to let me know. But one of the really fascinating things to point out about this pattern is if you're experienced with yarn overs, you'll know, or you may know, may not know, there's really a difference between when you do a yarn over and what stitches you're next to. Is it a yarn over between 2 knits? Is it a yarn over between 2 purls? Is it a yarn over going from a knit to a purl? Is it a yarn over going from a purl to a knit? And because of how the stitches work, the amount of yarn you get doing that yarn over in the standard way varies depending on what's going on. And this sweater is a fantastic example of this. Now, I think you'll be able to see that you'll notice on one side, the yarn overs are larger, and on the other side, they're just a bit smaller. Well, that's because the first yarn over, when you're doing this lace repeat, is going from a knit to a purl. So it's going from yarn at the back to the front. Now, the next one's going from where you're working a purl stitch to a knit stitch. So it's going over from front to back in that way. And as a result, you get a little less yarn when you're doing from the purl to the knit than you do from the knit to the purl. And so it's a fascinating difference in the lace. So I'll hold it up here like this. You can see it on either side of that. And it's something to keep in mind. Now, if I did this pattern again, I might consider reverse wrapping the yarn over, going from a purl to a knit stitch in order to get a little extra length on that yarn over. But yeah, I think there's some really good presentations online. I think Stephanie Pearl McPhee does a really great explanation about that reality of doing yarn overs and the different stitches that you're working and stuff. But it's interesting that you really see it here in this lace pattern. And I can totally understand why an author wouldn't really bother to have you do a different type of yarn over in the circumstances where there's just going to be a small size difference between the eyelets, the openings in the knit, and the amount of complexity and confusion it might add and everything. But for experienced knitters, when you know something like this is going to happen, you can actually manage that, understanding how those work. I actually take advantage of that in how I do yarn over and twist a stitch to do an increase, and how you yarn over can alter the amount of slack you have. I really need to go over how make one left, make one right. Was it yarn over and then twist the stitch in the following row, and then just putting on a twisted stitch, and even doing a reverse yarn over and then twisting on a following row, or just 4 variations of the exact same type of increase. And the interesting thing is that when you just do the make one where you lift the bar between the stitches, it scavenges yarn from the adjacent stitches, where those other methods where you add some slack by doing a yarn over or just throwing a completely twisted stitch on there do not. And again, it's an aesthetic, it's how you want it to look and everything. A good example, I don't have it here in hand, is the Ravello and how the raglan line looks. She's got make ones on each side of a center stitch, and you can see how it causes an effect on that bias line. Actually, I'll put in a picture of that. And that's, you can avoid that by doing those increases with slack, by doing, say, yarn overs on the previous row in one form or another, or just putting a twisted stitch on the needle on the previous row and working it the next row and stuff. But it's fascinating when you get into the details of how this stuff works. I'm a total knitting nerd. Okay, so that's it. That's I had committed a stretch goal to getting this done, and I do have the knitting done, but I just have the seaming up to do. So right now it's serving as a poncho for me. All right, and so that is the only sort of finished object. Now, let's see. Okay, now, oh yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. So I have not quite like, it's probably about sort of like 1.5 balls of worsted left over from my mom's stash from incorporating these into the sweater. And I think, take a look at that, I think I have enough for an emotional support chicken out of this. So I really want to make an emotional support chicken out of 100% leftover yarn from my mom's stash. And so I may use this to do the little tutorial I was talking about doing, where I talk about doing the 3 needle bind off to combine the tail sections, where you do a knit on the front and a purl in the back with the yarn kind of in between the layers, and you get a nice chain on top of the 3 needle bind off instead of a ridge. And so I think that is going to be the yarn I use to make an example of that. So yeah, that was the only other thing I wanted to talk about there about that. Otherwise, yes, I have been obsessed over the past month in finishing this sweater and my Ravello. So they have kind of consumed my brain power. But now these things have wound down, so to speak. And so I'm going to be getting back to the motorcycle sweater. Actually, I was toying with the idea of just going ahead and making the sleeves, since they don't have any intarsia, in order to make some concrete progress. So that's one of my goals, is to see how much of the sleeves I can get done for next time while I rework that intarsia pattern. So that'll be my biggest goal for next time. And then other things that are kind of sitting around and kind of waiting for my attention are my On the Spice Market and my Jimmy Bean's Wool Annual Shawl Club. And then I think, oh yeah, and I have my little blanket that uses fingering scraps, and I have another blanket, my National Park blanket, that waits until yarn comes out of the stash randomly to be put into it. Otherwise, the other things that are actively being worked on are, this bag is getting heavier and heavier every time I pull it out. Fortunately, this bag, I got this at the sweater camp at Darn It Anyway up in Stillwater, Minnesota, which was just a great camp to attend. It was a really lovely place. But this bag came from there, and it's got enough room to hold my blanket for now. Now I have a big canvas bag that says Woolalooya on the side that came from Field. I'm trying to remember if anybody knows the Field bags. I had ordered one of those bags and also ordered this kind of Woolalooya huge canvas bag as a bonus. And this blanket may end up starting to live in there at some point. But this is my Slip Stravaganza by Stephen West, and I have, for those who haven't seen this before, I have parceled out, I calculated the total number of stitches in this entire 86.5-inch diameter blanket to do throughout the year. And so I have a budget of stitches to do every day, and I've been keeping up with it. So we're getting close to a half year. We get the end of June, and I've been keeping up with it consistently every day. And so we are getting to be about 2/3 of the way through the bubble stitch here. And so this, again, continues to increase in size. And I really love how this blanket is turning out. I am doing it in, Finish Knits yarn. They have some yarn from Lancava that's a 75 wool, 25% nylon yarn that's a fairly reasonable price. And so it was reasonable for me to get a blanket's worth, like 16 skeins worth of yarn to do this blanket. So let's see how far back we can hold that. Ooh, there we go. And I figured something out over the past couple weeks, and I probably need to do a little video about it. One of the things about doing this bubble stitch is you knit several rows below, and then you drop the stitch, kind of loosen up the stitches above it, unravel them. And I think the first time I did it, I wasn't sure like how I was managing the yarn in the back of the work. Well, I've got that worked out now, where I'm kind of pushing. If you look at how you get these two strands here of the yarn as you're working this stitch, letting the slack bunch up between those two, and I think that helps really form the bubbles really well. You can see these are really looking well. Now I had some on my first row that didn't look so great, and what I've been doing is been going through with a knitting needle and kind of tightening up, pulling the slack in between that V so that bubble gets more emphasized. And it might be worth doing a little video about how I am forming these bubble stitches and how I'm kind of fixing the appearance of some of them in that first round that I did. But otherwise, this continues to be on track. This bubble section will finish by around, I think it's around the end of June, and then we'll finally get on to the next slip stitch section. But yeah, it's been fun. So we have, as you can see, there's, was it 2? We're doing the 3rd repeat. There'll be a 4th repeat of the 3 colors to come yet. So I'm absolutely loving this project because I'm able to keep up with it. It's around, I can't remember, it's 500 and something. It's less than 600 stitches a day. And when you think about it, that's only about, let's say that's less than 10 rows around a sock. So it's totally reasonable to fit in a day and do on a daily basis, which is what I'm doing. So I encourage you, if you find these blanket patterns daunting, to come up with just a regular budget for how much you want to do each day on it, and just commit to doing that for a certain amount of time, and you will get there and start getting that complete. All right, so that's that one. Now, next, let's see. Oh, the only other, okay, it's back here. And if you're not familiar with it, I have this pegboard from IKEA, and this is where I hang up my whips in progress back here. And so I got a lot of work in on my Brio Clava. Let's see this. So this is the Stephen West Brio Clava, and I'm doing this in some drops yarn. I think it's their Lima in black, and their silky, was it the, I'd have to take a look. It's their Surrey alpaca yarn in silk that I'm using in mist for the fuzzy part. And you can see where I did the shaping with the brioche right there. And the cool thing is, so here's the outside of the brioche, and then here's the inside of the brioche. So I've got less than an inch to go, going up. And next thing I'll be doing is sort of like, think of it like the heel of a sock, put it this way. I'm going to be knitting the kind of like the heel flap or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to be knitting that part here to make the top, and then be knitting some plain stockinette around the front that gets folded over. And so I really like this pattern. It's a really great pattern for doing brioche. It might be, if you're new to brioche, it might be a little intimidating with the shaping in there, but there's only 6 reductions on each side. Otherwise, it's just straight. Now, at the top, you know, I was about to say Stephen King. Excuse me. Stephen West's Brio Clava pattern, he has you cast off a certain amount on each side and then knit a flap and then sew it down together. I don't do that. I didn't do that on the first one. What I did was I came in and then I worked it just like a heel flap up on a toe-up sock. And it is, I went back and forth, and I combined the edge stitches in along the way, just like you would with the gusset stitches on a toe-up sock and a flap. And I like the way that turns out. And I kind of described that in the first time I'd done this Brio Clava and everything. So this will be seamed. I'll have a start on the sleeves for my husband's sweater, and I will have this finished for next time. And so making good progress. I'm anxious to get some socks back on the needle, so I'm looking forward to casting off on this Brio Clava in particular and having that ready for next winter and getting some socks started. Now, that's it for works in progress. It's going to be a little bit of a light episode. Now, the next thing that happened was I got, every other month I get from Bare Naked Wools, I get their barn box. Now they are a company that does minimally processed wool, and they try to find these, you know, specific breed specific yarns that they make and everything. And so I've really enjoyed it, kind of getting those yarns and trying them out. They knit so nicely on the needles. I feel like they work so easily. Now, the barn box is kind of cool because not only do you get a unusual wool, you get first dibs at buying more of it. If you want more than enough to make a certain type of thing, you get first access and 10% off. And then you get a free pattern with the yarn, and not a specific pattern, but you get a selection of patterns to choose from that you can pick one where they picked a bunch of different patterns that go with the yarn. And Ann Hansen, who's behind Bare Naked Wools and Knit Spot, she has a great pattern library. Now, this one, this month, as soon as I opened it up, my dog was like, "Hey, what's that?" Because it's got a very sheepy smell. And if you get this and haven't opened yet, still need to be surprised, you might want to skip forward a little bit. But I think most folks who've gotten it will have gone over it by now. But again, you might want to skip forward a bit. But this is, what's it? Masham, not Mash, but Masham Sport from there. And it's made from 100% Masham wool. And man, does this have a slick, smooth kind of feeling to it. It's really fascinating. And it's just a great feeling sport weight. And I was trying to think of what I might do with this. And I was thinking 2 of them in sport. I could do a ranunculus, but as I was paging through, I found a pattern I found really interesting. So I will put a picture of that here. It was a, it should be in my favorites. Let's see if it's there. Famous last words. The answer is no. It's not there. It's linked in the yarn entry. Let's do this by date added. There it is, and there it is. Frosted Leaves. Frosted Leaves by Lisa Haynes. And I'll put in a picture over there. And so I thought 2 skeins of this would be enough to do that Frosted Leaves. I think it would look great. And so that's what I think I would like to do with this when it comes up, but I reserve the option of changing my mind if it will come up. The question is when. But this goes into the pool of yarns that are available for the Yarn Randomizer, and I really enjoy it. I can't recommend Barn Box enough, or Bare Naked Wool's yarns. They really are lovely to use. And if you like non-superwash yarns and you like trying out unique fibers and everything, it's really absolutely worth your time to try some of that out. Now, so added that. Now, fortunately, I had yarn budget to cover that. So I had 2,519 yards of yarn budget. And the way my rule is, twice as much has to go out as comes in. So when I bring yarn in, so for example, this 400 yards, I have to subtract 800 yards out. I've spent 800 yards out of my yarn budget. So that would bring me down to about 1,700 yards of budget that I have. But I'll be adding in the amount of yarn I used in this sweater shortly as I seam this up, and that'll give me another 1,181 yards of yarn into my yarn budget. So I'm trying to build up some yarn budget right now for a knitting retreat that I'm going to in the beginning of June. And so I'm doing Jimmy Bean Wool's 20th anniversary knitting retreat, and so I'm really looking forward to that. And that'll be in Reno and stuff. So I want to have a little elbow room. And so to that end, I don't have a destash for this episode, but I will for next time. So there's some yarn I'm thinking about destashing in order to kind of pad out my yarn budget a little bit before I go on that trip. Now, so I think we are down to the next Yarn Randomizer pick. But right before we go to that, I wanted to bring up the previous pick again. I had some Anzula Nebula that I was going to combine with this yarn. Now, when I wound this yarn up, when it was in the skein, it looked like it might, switch back and forth between colors and everything. Well, it basically looks like there's just 2 colors. There's this purple and there's this. And so how I combine it with this. And so I'm thinking about it, but I'm thinking that I might try just using one of these colors, maybe the green. Maybe I'll think about it. But I didn't want to have one sock completely change from one color to the next, so it doesn't fade or gradiate to another color. It's 2 different colors. So I'm still going to use this, but we'll figure out. These are going on after the Brio Clava. These are going to be curio socks for people who didn't see the last episode, which normally uses now I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but the yarn, there's a yarn that's somewhat expensive, dyed-in-the-wool, that people use for a lot of projects, and I thought I'd substitute this for that, and so I ended up, it's a little bit different than I expected, but I'll make it work. Now, that was yarn pick number 16. Now for this episode, I have yarn pick number 17 for this year, for 2024. And I think I've got it written down here. Yes. Now the crazy thing is, this was also a yarn. These 2 yarns, along with another one, were used in a suburban shawl that I made from Hohi Locatelli. So crazy, back-to-back picks, numbers way far apart. I think one's 34 and this one was like 200, was it 298? Actually, let me grab that. See So you can see my little wooden chips that I used to pick the yarn, 298. And so they got picked back to back, but there's a good chunk of this left. So there's 248 yards of this. So I figured, as I thought about it and what was possible with this, I'm going to use this by itself, and I am going to make myself a little pair of shorty socks. And I found a pattern that I'm interested in, and it's called now the question is how is this pronounced, but Gerentia Sneaker Socks by Silky R. I love the look, and I'll stick in a picture. And so there's that lace, has an unusual looking heel, has an interesting back part on it above that would go above the back of the sneaker and everything. So I thought those look super cool. That's what I'm going to do with this yarn. So I'll have some sparkly, let's see, some sparkly socks. This is Molly Girl Diva. I probably haven't even said yet. It's Molly Girl. The yarn is Diva, their yarn Diva, which is a Stellina yarn, if you can't see the sparkles. And this colorway is Pour Some Sugar on Me. For anybody who listened to popular music back in the day, you'll recognize that song. But yeah. And so this is pick number 17 for 2024. Now I have actually got a buildup in my queue because I have so many sweaters in there. Oh, and before next time, I plan to cast on the next sweater in my queue, which is the Anna Tee. And I have some ideas about how I'm going to use, I have 5 colors of yarn that I'm going to use in that. And I've got some ideas on how I want to shift from one color to the next and everything. So I'll go over that in the next episode. I think other than that, that's everything I had. And as you can see, I'm getting a little overheated in here. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying the weather. I've got to get out and do some more mowing and try to stay cool. And I hope you're having a wonderful time. I hope you're enjoying the weather, whether you're going into sweater weather right now or whether you're getting into summer like it is here. It feels like summer already. But also enjoy your knits.